everyone, and welcome back to a new video. And in today's video I want to talk about all the books I read in March, and I'll also be sharing a few different things throughout the video. I have a bit of an unhaul, and I received some bookish gifts and got a few things that just feel very springtime appropriate, and I just wanted to share it all with you. So it's a bit of a bookish things video, a wrap up, and just all things cozy. We're just gonna get started, and before I talk about all the books I read in March, I first wanted to share some gifts that I received. First up, we have this mini Pride and Prejudice puzzle. It is a 252 piece double-sided jigsaw puzzle, and it looks like one side is this print and then the other side is, I believe, a chapter from the book. It looks like chapter 43. And I have one of these, and I think it's Alice in Wonderland, the one that I have, but my sister got this for me. She saw it at the bookstore and knows how much I love Pride and Prejudice, and I'm just beyond thankful for this, and it's so cute. And it's also a really nice size, so I've just had it displayed on my shelves for the last couple of weeks and will continue to do so. I love puzzles so much, and I adore Pride and Prejudice, so this is just perfect. I also wanted to share a few gifts I received from such an incredible person, and I just don't have the words to thank you, Jacqueline, for sending these. Jacqueline has been a subscriber and frequent commenter on my videos for quite some time now. I believe it's been about 2 years since you started commenting, and you just make me feel so appreciated, and every time you comment it just brings a smile to my face. And the fact that you sent me these gifts and this little bag of goodies truly made my day when I received them. I'm just so grateful, Jacqueline. Thank you so much. But she did send me a little card, and in the card there were some stickers, so I'll share those. I'll share a couple at a time, but I don't know how well it'll focus on these. They're so cute. And then we have these 3 as well. I love this one, Positivity. So cute. And then this lovely card, which I won't read, but it just truly made my day, so thank you so much, Jacqueline. Now, the bag of goodies that she sent quite literally made me squeal of excitement. I'm definitely a big coffee drinker, but I love drinking tea, especially afternoon tea. So I'll have coffee in the morning. I cannot function without it, but I will always have tea almost every day in the afternoon, and I definitely do prefer black tea. So she sent me a collection here of different types of black tea. We have this Taylor's of Harrogate English breakfast tea. We have some Tetleys, which I love. I love Tetley's teas, and I love the names of these. So the first one is Lady Clarence, which I just love so much. Distinguished and elegant, refreshingly well-rounded English breakfast style tea. And then we have Lord Kensington, intrepid and debonair, a full-bodied, characterful blend brimming with flavor. It says it's strong and full-bodied. And then this one is Duchess Balmoral, which has vanilla in it, and I'm very excited for this one as well. I love vanilla in tea. Charming and graceful, beautifully creamy with just a hint of vanilla. So very excited for these Tetley's tea. Then we have this English afternoon tea. We have Irish breakfast tea, and then just some more English black tea. I am so thankful and so thrilled. And they came in this adorable little Easter bag, which I'm obsessed with. But the most exciting goodies that Jacqueline sent are these 3 books, and I'm just so grateful. This first one is The Rose and the Thistle by Laura Frantz, and I have read Laura Frantz before. It's been so long. I haven't picked up one of her books in years, probably 5 or 6 years. But this one is one I've been wanting to read for a while, as it's set in Scotland and it's historical fiction, and I'm just so excited to have this. So thank you so much. I've heard it said that if you like Outlander but don't want all of the spice and all of the stuff that comes with Outlander, that this is a good one to read, and it gives off those vibes. It's set in the 18th century as well, so I'm very excited. And these next 2 books I am so excited for as well. I have been wanting to read another D.E. Stevenson for quite some time. I have read 1 book by her, but I already know she is going to be an author that I fall in love with. The book I read was Miss Bunkle's book, and I thought it was so much fun, and I need more D.E. Stevenson in my life. And she sent me Mrs. Tim Flies Home and Mrs. Tim Gets a Job. And I believe these are in the Mrs. Tim Christie series, and I couldn't find a copy of the first book. The only copies that I could find online are like $50, which is insane. but I was able to get it on Kindle, so I'm starting that as soon as possible, and then I will continue the series. I think these are books 4 and 5 if I'm not mistaken, but I have heard nothing but praise for this series. So we have Mrs. Tim of the Regiment, and then Mrs. Tim Carries On, Mrs. Tim Gets a Job, and Mrs. Tim Flies Home. Those are the 4 books in the series, but I am so excited and cannot wait to get into D.E. Stevenson even more. These are also from the Furrowed Middle Brow collection, which I'm obsessed with the cover designs of these books. I only have a couple, but I plan on collecting more, and I do have one more actually that I purchased myself that I am excited to share, but I'm just so excited for these. So thank you again, Jacqueline. You truly made my week. You made my spring and just brought such a big smile to my face when I opened this package. Thank you so much. I was going to share these next 2 books for a future haul, but I am trying to slow down the book buying, and the next one is a Furrowed Middle Brow book, which I just mentioned. So I did end up getting Dear Hugo by Molly Clavering, and this book was a purchase influenced by Jen from Jen's Reading Life. She shared her Furrowed Middle Brow collection, and she had me at Epistolary. This is an epistolary novel. I've heard really great things about it, and the way that she talked about it as well, it just sounds like something I would really enjoy. So I had to get this one. I don't know too much of what it's about, and I honestly think I'm just going to go in really not knowing what to expect, but I'm very excited for this. And then I was also at the thrift store and found this book, and I don't know if it'll be the book for me personally, just because I'm not huge on thrillers, but this book I cannot find anywhere. It is so expensive online. Even used copies can be quite pricey, and my library doesn't have it. I couldn't get a Kindle copy for some reason, and so when I saw this at the thrift store, and it's, I believe, a UK edition of the book as well, I had to grab it, and that is 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton. And the only person I've heard talk about this is Gloria from Gloria Z. Thompson, and she loved this book. So I decided to pick it up. If I don't enjoy it, it's not a big deal. I spent very little on it, but I thought I'd pick it up. And it looks like there's a blizzard and a school is under siege and everyone is barricading themselves in the school, and there's a gunman on the premises. So it sounds really intense, but I've heard it's very well written and has just a great plot line, great pacing, everything. So very high hopes, but we'll see what I think. I do want to share a couple more, I guess, random things. I did mention the puzzle that my sister bought me, and another puzzle that I purchased myself. I got this just... When you see it, you'll understand why I could not pass this puzzle up, and that is The World of Jane Austen. Need I say any more of why I bought this puzzle? There's the full design. I am just obsessed. You are cordially invited into the world of Jane Austen. Take a turn around the garden with Mr. Knightley, surprise Mr. Darcy at Pemberley, and escape to the seaside with Anne Elliot. Immerse yourself in the intrigues, balls, and proposals of Jane Austen's Regency England while piecing together the rolling hills and stately homes of this intricate jigsaw puzzle featuring 60 unforgettable characters. And then on the side, it shows the different characters you're to look out for in the puzzle. And I'm just so excited. I'm so excited. I haven't been puzzling nearly as much as I would like to, and I'm really looking forward to this one. And with how gross winter has been here, I just need all the springtime colorful vibes. And so buying this puzzle was a dopamine boost, and I needed that. So that is The World of Jane Austen. And I also do need some new reading journal type journals, I guess. So this is what I've been using, and I never really share it because my notes are nothing fancy. Like some books I write a very short little blurb. So most of the books I read, I don't actually write anything in here, and I don't write things about every single book I read. This is just for some books, but this is basically almost completely written through. I needed some new journals, and I ended up getting this collection of 5. They were 5 for $20 at Indigo. And they're so pretty, they're so springtime, summery. I just love it so much. So there's this beautiful green one. I love this shade of blue so much. Then there's this kind of lilac purple. Then there's this one, and then this one. And they're thin and lined. But what I like is that if I am reading multiple books at a time. Like, for example, right now I'm reading the Iliad. I'm also reading Middlemarch. Actually, I haven't picked up Middlemarch in quite a while. But anyways, just as an example, I'm reading 2 big books that I want to take notes on. And I don't know how much page space I'll need for the both of them. So I'll start taking notes on Middlemarch in this notebook and start the Iliad in this one. I just like having multiple notebooks at a time and not having to kind of calculate how much page space I will need for a certain book so that I can start writing notes for another book because I read multiple books at the same time. Does that make any sense? But anyways, these are really, really pretty. I really love them. They scream spring and summer, and I just needed that pop of color in this gross, it's supposed to be spring, but it's not spring type of weather we've been having in Southern Ontario. So I'm really excited for these. I've also, I don't know how well you can see, but I received this vase for my birthday in November, and I ended up going to Michael's and just getting some fake flowers because I just don't do real flowers. I can never take care of them. I'm terrible with any kind of plant, but I'm honestly not the biggest fan of these flowers in this vase. I might switch that up, but I just wanted to, I don't know, springify my bookshelves. And I do have a couple other things that I'll show, like that Alice in Wonderland book with the 2 little mugs. I just wanted to add a little splash of spring to the shelves, and I plan on getting some more things. I'm probably going to go to a couple thrift stores and see what they have because everything is so expensive in terms of home decor, and sometimes you can find some gems at thrift stores. But that is what I wanted to share in terms of random spring things. And then I'll quickly go through the books I'm unhauling, very, very rapid fire. And then we'll talk about all the books I read in March. First up, we have Arcanum Unbounded, the Cosmere collection by Sanderson. I am still going to be trying to read some of the Cosmere books, but I have no interest in the, what's the series even called? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the series. I think it's The Way of Kings, something Kings, that series. The Stormlight Archive series. I have no interest in reading it anymore, just a lot of stuff that I've heard about later books, and I'm not a huge high fantasy person, and I need to stop with the whole fear of missing out thing because that has honestly started destroying my reading life. I want to read what I want to read, and I'm going to be reading the types of books that bring me joy and that suit my reading tastes. I'm not going to keep reading certain books just because everyone else seems to love them, and I feel the need to also read them and love them. I said I was going through these rapid fire. I don't care to read all the little short stories, novellas, etc., so this is going. Man of Shadow and Mist by Michelle Griep. I did really enjoy this book overall, but it's a Christian fiction book I don't think I will read again, so this one does not need to stay. And to be honest with the Christian fiction on my shelves, I am probably going to go through them again and weed out some more that I just don't think I will read again. I need more shelf space. So this one is one that is going. A couple more Christian fiction books. We have The Writing Desk by Rachel Hauck Hauck, I'm not sure. It's a book that I read and really enjoyed, but it has been like 6-7 years since I've read it, and I don't think I'll reread it. Of Love and Treason by Jamie Ogle. A little sad about this one because it's a more recent purchase, but I read it and had some issues with it, and I didn't hate it, but it's just not a book I see myself rereading. At the Mountain's Edge by Genevieve Graham. This is a great book. I read it many, many years ago, and it made the Yukon just come alive. It is a Canadian author, and I do want to read more from her. I haven't read many Canadian authors and their historical fiction set within Canada, but I'm just going to pick up her books from the library whenever the mood strikes. And to be honest, I think this is only one of 2 books I've read by her. She has so many out, and I just can't read everything. So this is not going to get reread because there are so many books out there I need to get to, and gotta pick which ones I read. So this one is going. Doctor Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clark. This one I read half of and DNF'd and will never pick it back up. It is not the book for me. Not a terrible book, but just not for me. Then we have A Cozy Mystery, Murder at Archley Manor by Sarah Rosette. This was really fun when I read it, but very middle of the road, and it is a long series, and I just don't think it's a series I will continue, so this one is gonna go. Same idea with Murder in Fullbridge Village, a 1920s mystery by J. Gill. I had a really fun time reading this book. It's really short. It's more like a novella, but I don't think I'll continue the series. There are just so many books that I need to read, and I just don't have the desire to continue. So these two are going for that reason. And last but not least, Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger. I got this from the thrift store a while ago, and I was looking forward to starting the series, but I've heard that later books, they just have certain content that I'm not sure I'm comfortable with in middle grade, and I'm honestly not the biggest middle grade reader either. I am very, very picky with middle grade. I have to be in the right mood for middle grade and in the right headspace, and I just don't think I will absolutely love this book, so I just don't care to even start it, and it's a long series. It's going. So we'll go over to all the books I read in March, and I ended up reading a little bit more than I thought I did. It felt like I read less than I ended up reading, and it's just because the first couple weeks, I would say actually 3/4 of the month, was really, really slumpy for me. I couldn't find my rhythm with reading. I was really struggling. I don't know why exactly. January, February, March were rough. I'm finding April has really picked up in a good way, and I am finally feeling like I'm getting into a really good rhythm. I'm finding the joy in reading again, and I'm just in a much better place and headspace in April so far, and praying that that continues. But yeah, March just, reading was not it. But I started off strong, so I'll talk about the books that I read in order, the order that I read them. And I was going to try to participate in Middle Grade March and March Mystery Madness. I ended up reading a couple middle grade books, and I did read a couple mysteries. In the moment, it did not feel like I was participating in these readathons. I was just reading and not really fully immersed in everything that I was reading, even though I was enjoying what I was reading. Does that make any sense? It almost feels like March was almost like a fever dream of a month. Like, I'm looking at these books, and I know that while I was reading them, I enjoyed them, and I did take some notes, but I don't know. But the first book I read, I, of course, absolutely loved because it was a reread. It's a book I adore so, so much, and that is Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I'm also obsessed with Garth Williams illustrations. They just bring the story to life in such a beautiful way. Like, oh my goodness. Is that not the most beautiful thing? I loved Little House on the Prairie so, so much. I love this series, and it was such a joy to reread this and spend time with Pa and Ma and Mary and Laura and Carrie and their extended family during Christmas time. And I'm truly just still so amazed at their resilience, and pioneering was not for the faint of heart, and it just blows my mind. The things that they did to survive every single day was just a day full of hard work, but they worked together, and even from when the girls were very young, they had to help out quite a lot, and they still managed to have so many beautiful family moments together. And I know this is Laura's, I guess, romanticized version of her upbringing, but it's still just so heartwarming, and I love spending time with this fictional family so much. So I did read this for Middle Grade March, but I mainly read it for Anne's Read the Classics challenge, and the prompt for April was to read, or not for April, for March, was to read a children's book, and the scavenger hunt items were siblings, mother, and a pet. Definitely all three in here. Then the challenge for the month was to unhaul a book, and technically I did unhaul these in March. Like, they were off my shelves, out of sight, out of mind in March, but I just haven't had a chance to share the unhaul until early April. But anyways, I thought this was fantastic, and it was a very fun reread, and I can't wait to continue rereading the series. I'm going to take it very slow though, just when the mood strikes, and that's what's so great about the series. And because I'm familiar with the storylines and I grew up on the TV show, I could just kind of dip in and out of the series whenever I'm in the mood. But I loved this so much. That is Little House in the Big Woods. Such a fantastic read. The next book that I finished was an Agatha Christie book. And if you've been around for a while and have seen my recent wrap-ups and everything, even though I love Agatha Christie, I've really been struggling the last little while. I'm just finding that I keep reading very mediocre books, and just finding myself disappointed by a lot of what I'm reading by her. But I finally read a book that ended up being a 4-star read for me, and I had so much fun with it. I had such a fun time reading this story, and that is Dumb Witness. And I love the title as well. The reason it's called Dumb Witness is because one of the main characters is a fox terrier, this precious dog named Bob, and he's just the best. It was such a breath of fresh air to read an Agatha Christie book that did not disappoint. I finished it and I was so happy that I enjoyed this as much as I did. It was 4 stars. It wasn't an all-time favorite Agatha Christie. The mystery itself didn't absolutely blow my mind. I didn't think it was super creative, but I still found it really fun, and I did not guess who the culprit was, so that was fun. But basically in this story, and another reason I love it so much, is we have a smaller cast of characters. We're introduced to this group of family members, this old woman named Emily and her nieces and nephews, and she is, I believe, in her 70s, and they all come to visit her, and they're expecting to find out that they have this grand inheritance waiting for them because she has so much money that she doesn't know what to do with, apparently, according to her very, very selfish family members. But one day, Emily, she trips and she falls down the stairs, and it seems like it may have been one of her dog Bob's toys that caused her to trip, but she's very suspicious. She thinks maybe one of her family members had something to do with it, and so she writes a letter to Hercule Poirot asking him to come visit her. She's very, I guess, nervous just because everything that had been going on. She's just stressed, and she just wants to ensure that she's safe. And so Poirot receives this letter, only he receives it a couple months after it was posted, supposedly, and Emily is already dead. And the story goes from there. I did really like the cast of characters in this one as well. I thought they were all, I guess, more typical of Agatha Christie, but still really fun to follow. And Bob just was the absolute best. What I absolutely loved is there are a couple moments in the story where Agatha Christie gives Bob a voice, and it's like his dog thoughts are being shared with us, and there are quotation marks around them too, and it's just so cute. This one part where he's actually with Poirot and Hastings, and this is what it says. "Good watchdog, aren't I?" he seems to be saying. "Don't mind me, this is just my fun. My duty too, of course. Just have to let him know there's a dog about the place. Deadly dull morning. Quite a blessing to have something to do. Coming into our place? Hope so. It's darned dull. I could do with a little conversation." And he ends up loving Hastings, and it's just the cutest thing ever. Another little passage. "Pleased to meet you, I'm sure," he observed as he sniffed around our ankles. "Excuse the noise, won't you? But I have my job to do. Got to be careful who we let in, you know. But it's a dull life, and I'm really quite pleased to see a visitor. Dogs of your own, I fancy?" Bob was precious. This was a really fun book. Highly recommend. I say I'm going over these books in the order that I read them, but I do read multiple books at a time, and some I take longer to read than others, so it's technically in the order that I finished them. And the next book that I finished is The Railroad Children by Charlotte Mary Yonge, and so far of everything that I've read by her, this is probably my least favorite. Now, I haven't read a whole lot by her. I still have a very long list of her works to get through, and I love her writing so much, but this one was just fine for me. I think I landed on like a 3.5 star, and now thinking about it, I honestly remember almost nothing about the story, and I definitely pushed through, and I probably should have just temporarily set it aside. But it's about these 3 kids who are orphaned, and their father had died in this accident that killed a bunch of people working on a railroad. And so their father, while he's dying, he actually writes to his family that he was estranged from, asking them to take in his children, and he ends up passing away. He had never raised his children in the church. They had never been baptized. Charlotte Mary Yonge was very religious, so she wrote a lot of high church types of things into her books, and a lot of it I don't know too much about, but I thought it was really interesting, and it was really sweet to see these kids kind of learning what it means to be a Christian, I guess. I thought the story was fine. There were some moments that tugged at my heartstrings, but overall, I just kind of struggled to get through it, to be completely honest. And I did read it with a couple friends, and it was nice to chat about the book. They all finished it long before I did, but it was a good story, just not one that I think I will reread or one that will stick with me. Definitely lower in my ranking of Charlotte Mary Yonge, but not a terrible story. The next book I finished is The Last Camel Died at Noon by Elizabeth Peters, and this is book 6 in the Amelia Peabody mystery series. and I haven't picked the series up in, I think, about a year. So I was long overdue to pick up another in the series, and I'm just taking my time with it, picking up a book whenever the mood strikes. And it is such a fun series set in the Victorian era, and Amelia Peabody is an archaeologist. She goes to Egypt very often with her husband Emerson, and they go to various archaeological digs, and there's always a mystery, usually murder, that they get involved in, and it's really, really fun to follow them. I see the series as just book candy, and if I were to take it more seriously, I'd be a little concerned in how Amelia and Emerson parent their child. And also in Emerson's anger issues, he definitely needs to take a class on anger management. But honestly, I just go to the series for a fun time. That's what I expect. That's what I get out of it. And I get all the ancient Egypt vibes. In this one, they set off for a dig in the Sudan, only to be unwillingly drawn into the search for an African explorer and his young bride who've been missing for 12 years. Barely surviving the rigors of the desert, the deaths of their camels, and abandonment by their guides, Amelia and Emerson suddenly find themselves prisoners in the midst of a lost city and civilization. They must plan an escape, as well as rescuing the innocent trapped with them. I honestly just love exploring Egypt through the eyes of a Victorian female archaeologist and her husband, and just getting up to all the shenanigans they get up to. It's so fun. This one in particular, out of the 6, had a really great plot line. There were different twists and turns, and I just had so much fun with it. Some people may be a little put off by the crude, I guess, marital jokes between Emerson and Amelia. They are married, and sometimes they'll say things, and this book is in first person as well from Amelia's perspective, so sometimes she'll mention things about her married life that may make some readers uncomfortable, but it doesn't personally bother me. I think it's just very much said in passing, and they're very happy. We'll just leave it at that. But it is just such a fun series, and one I keep coming back to when I need something like this to just get me out of a slump or give me that escape and take me somewhere very exotic. So very, very fun series. Much needed coffee break. And also, Peter Rabbit is absolutely adorable. And speaking of, I also picked up a couple of the Peter Rabbit books, and I have read the complete collection, but I am rereading them very, very slowly, just when the mood strikes. So we have The Tale of Two Bad Mice, and then we have The Tale of Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle, and these are precious. This one I think I liked a little bit more. I gave them both 4 stars. They are so, so precious. I love the illustrations so much. I mean, like, come on, that is adorable. The 2 little mice there. I just love these so much. I am keeping these forever and ever and ever. They are precious. I love Peter Rabbit, and I want to visit Beatrix Potter's house so, so bad. I need to go to England and visit. I need to go. But yes, these are the perfect books to pick up when I just need that cottagecore, comforting, illustrated type of story to just raise my spirits. These are perfection. Oh boy, this next book. I don't even know what to say about it because it was a journey. It took me 2 months to read it actually, and it just felt like it was never going to end at some point. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I did not hate the story. I love this author's writing, and there were certain characters that I found to be very fascinating, but I wanted more. And that is Ralph the Heir by Anthony Trollope. I buddy read this book with my friend Elizabeth, and we both ended up feeling very similarly about the story. It was a good book, but not Trollope's best, in my opinion. And he even said when he wrote this story that he thinks it's like one of his worst books or something like that, something along those lines. And while I don't think it's a terrible book, and I don't think it's one of his worst, at least I don't know. I haven't read very many of his works. The only other books I've read by him that I have to compare are the Chronicles of Barset, but I don't know. I really struggled with this one for quite a bit of the story. There are a few different storylines going throughout the story, but the main one features Ralph, who is heir to an uncle's estate, and his uncle had an illegitimate son who can't inherit anything because of, I guess, the laws with legitimacy and inheritance and everything at the time. His name is also Ralph, so Ralph has a cousin, and Ralph the Heir is our hero, although he is one of the most unheroic and inconstant characters I've ever read in a book. But anyways, so Ralph is set to inherit his uncle's estate, his home, everything. So this Ralph, who is the heir, he is just terrible with money. He really infuriates his uncle, who is just so angry that his son, while illegitimate, won't get a single thing from him because of the laws, and everything will go to his nephew, who just squanders his money away. He owes a ton of money to the man that makes his breeches, which I just think is hilarious. And so an option to get out of debt is for him to marry the breeches maker's daughter, Polly, and basically sell his inheritance. And that's all I'm going to say in terms of the story. So that kind of comes up, and then the story goes from there and the drama ensues. And then we do have a few other storylines. Ralph, the nephew, the heir, he has this family that he is friends with that are also main characters in the story. Sir Thomas Underwood, who is in politics and trying to get back into Parliament, and his daughters Patience and Clarissa. And so Ralph is kind of entangled with them. And Patience and Clarissa have a cousin named Mary who shows up. And at some point we have like a love square, a love pentagon. We have Ralph the heir's brother, George, who is in love with one of the girls, but that girl is in love with Ralph, and then Ralph is in love with someone, well, more like infatuated, but then there's Ralph the son who ends up in the picture, and it's messy. It's just messy. And then the daughter of the breeches maker's in the picture, and she has an admirer named Ontario Moggs. That's just one of the best names I've ever heard. But it's just a bunch of young adult ridiculous drama that goes on in this story, and inconstant characters, and just a whole lot of little things going on. And the storyline with Sir Thomas and the politics was so dull for me. I just could not care less. And I wanted more from characters like Mary, the cousin, and Ralph, who was the illegitimate son. Like, certain characters, they were so much more interesting and had more to them that Trollope just did not explore. And I don't know, we spent time with certain characters that I didn't care about, and then very little time with characters that I felt deserved more time. But it was still really well written, and that's the thing, like, Trollope knows how to write a story, and I love his writing style so much, and I love that he has such a tongue-in-cheek sense of humor. And Mr. Neefit, who is the breeches maker, he brought such a sense of comic relief to the story and made it really, really funny, and because of that, I was able to actually enjoy parts of the story. And so I feel like a 3.5 star just makes sense to me, but I did struggle at times. I feel like I keep comparing it to the Chronicles of Barset and how much I loved the characters in that series, so it's hard to give it a higher rating than 3.5 just because of how much I loved the Chronicles of Barset. But that is Ralph the Heir. I have a few more standalones that I own that I really want to read before I start the Palliser series. I'm a little nervous about the Palliser series just because of the politics, but I have heard that the characters are fantastic. So here's to hoping I love that series, but I'm really excited to read some more of his standalones. And yeah, that was Ralph the Heir. Quite the long 2-month journey through that book. Next up is The Mapping of Love and Death by Jacqueline Winspear. This is book 7 in the Maisie Dobbs series. And this one I gave 4 stars. It is not a favorite in the series, but still one that I really enjoyed. And this one, it basically deals with a young cartographer who went missing in action during World War I, and his remains were found in the 1930s. His remains were found in France, and his parents are asking Maisie to kind of help figure out what happened because it appears he was actually murdered rather than just like dying in action. Maisie starts investigating, and some crazy things are uncovered and a web of intrigue, as usually happens. There was also correspondence between the victim and this unnamed woman, and it seems like they were in love, so Maisie's trying to figure out who this woman was, and the story goes from there. And things also in Maisie's personal life are getting really, really sad as Maurice falls ill. And if you don't know anything about this series, Maurice is a character we were introduced to in the first book. He was basically Maisie's mentor, and he helped her in her education, becoming a psychologist and a private investigator and everything. And he's almost like a father figure for her as well. And he's just such a wonderful man. But he does fall ill in this story, and there's just a lot of things that happen, and it's an emotional roller coaster, that is for sure. And I did feel myself get a little choked up towards the end of the story, but it was so great. And even though it wasn't a favorite in the series, it was still a really great story, and I'm very excited to continue. I love this series so much. So that is The Mapping of Love and Death. I have one last book to talk about that I technically finished April 1st, but I did read the majority of it in March, so I'll just talk about it now. And that is Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, The Story of Little Women and Why It Still Matters by Anne Boyd Ryu. And this one I gave 4.5 stars. It was almost a perfect 5-star. Not quite, but it was such a great book, and I'm so glad I read it. I don't read nearly enough nonfiction, and I need to read more, especially about topics that interest me, like Little Women. Little Women is my favorite book of all time. You all know that, I've said that a million times, but I just loved this book. And I've tabbed it so much. Like, these are all just things I found interesting. These are things I want to share, but I definitely won't be able to share everything or we'll be here all day. I just found it to be such an interesting and engaging read, and most pages are just underlined, highlighted. I could not stop. The book is basically divided into 3 sections. So part 1 is the making of a classic, definitely my favorite of all 3 parts. And it basically just goes through Louisa May Alcott's journey to writing Little Women. We're introduced to her family, her journey as a writer, her journey to Little Women, to writing it, how her writing and that book impacted her family, and how her family impacted her writing, how the context she was living in and her literary influences impacted her writing, how Little Women would have been received at the time that it was published. The author goes through a lot of different editions of Little Women and the different illustrators, including Louisa May Alcott's younger sister. But the reason I loved part 1 so much was just because of the way the author analyzed and presented her analysis of the March family compared to the Alcott family. And I just thought it was so fantastic and so great. And it was brief. I guess, little biographical snippets of her family life, they were brief in how they were presented, but still very detailed, and I really, really liked that. In part 2, The Life of a Classic, the author goes through how Little Women was adapted for the stage, first obviously in theaters, and then eventually for the screen, and how that has changed through the decades, the different adaptations of Little Women. She goes through how so many different writers have been influenced by Little Women, by Louisa May Alcott, and something really interesting in that section was seeing how the perceived literary merit of Little Women has completely evolved over time, especially looking at the early 1900s when realism became a thing, and like hardcore realism without all that sentimentality. Authors like Ernest Hemingway would belittle Little Women and that kind of thing. Little Women was really seen as just fluff, sentimental fluff without much substance, and it's just interesting how realism really caused that shift. And part 3 was definitely my least favorite part, just personally for my tastes, but it talks about how Little Women is perceived today and how it's evolved mainly from the 90s until now. And she titled the chapters A Private Book for Girls, Can Boys Read Little Women? The next one is Growing Up Female with Little Women, and then Little Women and Girls Stories Today, and then kind of comparing how girls are portrayed in literature today versus how they were then. So not my favorite section, but still really, really great. I did want to share just a couple things that really, really fascinated me. And one thing that really just made me so interested to learn more about her family, and in particular her father, was this passage. However much her parents encouraged her literary ambitions, they also needed her to help provide for their struggling family. Bronson was a dreamer with little concern for the practical necessities of life and utterly incapable of earning a living wage. As a child, Louisa often described a philosopher like her father as a man up in a balloon with his family as the strings tugging to pull him down. I just thought that was kind of crazy, and just so much about Bronson Alcott really blew my mind, actually. I knew that Little Women was very much mellowed compared to Louisa May Alcott's actual life, and it still does not make me love the story any less, but this is interesting too. The full story of their lives could not be represented in a book for young people, containing as it did extreme poverty, religious radicalism, marital strife, suicidal thoughts, and possible mental illness. Louisa had a much rougher time of it than Jo ever did. There's also something the author says that I found really interesting, just about our interaction with literature. For a literary work to have cultural longevity, it must contain themes and characters about whom people care deeply, inspiring debates as if what happens on the page is real life. Reading such a book is a rewarding, if sometimes unsettling, experience. We may find that the person next to us in a class or book club feels so differently about it that we wonder if we read the same text. Or we may read it again as adults and wonder what were we thinking as kids. What we thought was thrilling now seems preachy, or what appeared a light frolic now has dark undercurrents. As a result, we may turn against our childhood favorite or appreciate it more deeply than ever. Little Women is just that kind of rich, complex, often contradictory book that can inspire such intense reactions. And then just this short passage that I will definitely be reflecting on as I read the book again the next time that I reread Little Women. There has never been much agreement about how to read or what to think about Little Women. Is it a realistic tale of a New England family during the years of the Civil War, or a nostalgic, even sentimental portrait of a family life that never really existed? Is it a rebellious tale of one young woman's resistance to the restrictions of her era, or a dispiriting portrait of her capitulation to the status quo? Despite 150 years of discussion, the debates over these questions remain unresolved. But this is very true as well. Little Women has been enjoyed, discussed, and picked apart by early 20th century new women and flappers, mid-century baby boomers, and late 20th century feminists, never losing its power to delight and provoke. Okay, one more quote that I need to share because it's really, really nice, and it's true, in my opinion. And this is by Sean O'Phelan, not sure how to pronounce the name, but he says, "I will not quarrel with any reader's right to lay Alcott's book aside because there is too much sweetness and light in it," he writes, "but I do feel that the balance she strikes between the dark and bright sides of life is more true to common experience than the opposite imbalance of our so-called realists. In other words, Little Women is neither a realist nor a sentimental text, as they have become defined by their extremes of dark and bright. Rather, it is a novel that has lasted precisely because it manages to place itself in the middle where most of us live." I also wrote down a bunch of names of authors that were contemporaries of Louisa May Alcott. Some were known like Thoreau, Henry James Sr., Ralph Waldo Emerson, but then a bunch of other names that I had never heard before, like Susan Coolidge, Martha Finley, Elizabeth Stuart Phelps, Constance Fenimore Woolson, Harriet Prescott Spofford, Lavinia Russ, and more. So many authors that were American writers at the time that just aren't talked about anymore, but I'm really interested to look into their works as well. But that is Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy. Such a great nonfiction, and I know I will reread this in the future. It was so, so great. So those were all the books I finished in March, and I just wanted to quickly mention, I'm not going to talk about the book because I will talk about it in my April wrap-up. But Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy definitely made me want to read more like Little Women adjacent stories. So I ended up picking up and finishing March within the first week of April. And this one I had temporarily DNF'd last year because of how heavy it was and the subject matter and everything. But I picked it back up last week. It was amazing. Loved it. So that I will talk about in April. But this one I needed to read after finishing Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy. And then after I finished this, I picked up Incidents in the Life of a Slave Woman. And I'm just, I don't know, I'm on this like Civil War, Little Women, Civil War era type kick right now. And I am really looking forward to talking about those books at the end of April. Now, as to what I'm currently reading, I'm very excited to say I started The Iliad by Homer. Haven't made very much progress, but this book I am going to be filming separate videos for. Sort of like vlog style videos, I guess, but I will have separate videos with thoughts and everything for my reading experience with this one. I also read and finished Fairest of Heart by Karen Whittemire, and we'll talk about this for my end of April wrap-up. I started Henrietta's Wish by Charlotte Mary Yonge, which I'm reading with a group of lovely friends, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And I also started Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. I am on chapter 4. I'm already in love with Molly Gibson. I've barely made a dent in this book, and I'm already in love with the main character. And then I did mention I'm also currently reading Incidents in the Life of a Slave Woman, and I am just on such a kick right now. I want to read everything, and I plan on starting several books this week, so I gotta hurry up and finish Incidents in the Life of a Slave Woman and Henrietta's Wish. I do want to probably finish that sooner than I was going to. We're reading like a chapter a day, so there are 19 chapters. The idea is to finish by April 19th, but I think I'm gonna try to finish it this week. But we'll see. We'll see how things are with work and everything. But that is it for this very, very long video. It was a bit of everything, a bit of these are the things I got recently, these are the books I'm getting rid of, and these are the books I finished recently. Just a bit of everything, but I wanted to share with you all. It's been a little bit busy, so I haven't been able to upload very frequently this year, but it's fine. I am just grateful that you're all here. Thank you so much for watching this video, for sticking around. This community just means the world to me. Thank you so much for being here, friends, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.